I do want to try to get this mini-mentary in. We love these. I feel that we've heard the story of the crossing of the Delaware at least 12 times already this season, but this just came out from the White House today. Let's check it out.
In order to form a more perfect union.
Whoa! Just released from Erica Kirk a few moments ago, everybody. Had a very productive conversation with the real Candace Owens. More to come from both of us. Looking forward to AmFest this week. Time to get back to work. I mean, we can't do AmFest without clearing the air about everything that's been said. Like, we got to do that before Thursday. So, when's that gonna happen? Candace Owens says, is she, like, what's happening? We can't do the event without knowing what the fuck is happening. What does that even mean, Erica Kirk? Is it PSYOP season already? It sure is. Feels like it's every day now.
By September of 1776, the cause of independence looked bleak. Though Washington had miraculously escaped the British after the Battle of Long Island, the defeat of the American army had been a humiliating rout. Washington had made a number of mistakes, and some began to speak about replacing him, whether with General Charles Lee or with Horatio Gates. And what followed in the next 3 months only confirmed
the first
this
ever mullet.
assessment. The worst of it came on November 16th, when American forces were defeated in the northern end of Manhattan at Fort Washington. Washington ought to have abandoned Manhattan entirely, but for some reason he took the advice of Nathaniel Greene and left 5,000 men there. From across the Hudson River, through his spyglass, Washington watched their awful defeat. The Hessian mercenaries even bayoneted men to death who were trying to surrender. Knowing that the responsibility
talk about a
for
double
it
tap.
all fell on him was crushing. And a number of his officers saw Washington so overwhelmed that he turned away and wept like a child. 4 days later,
George
Washington's
Washington
troops
did
were
that?
chased from Fort Lee, New Jersey. But at this point, Washington knew that he must fight differently, and he would. The plan going forward was to retreat with his remaining army south through New Jersey, never allowing the British to engage them in a full and open fight in which the British would have the advantage. It would be what Washington called a war of posts, in which he retreated and retreated, trying to wear out the British as he did so. If Washington and his men continued to retreat successfully, they would eventually make it to the Delaware River, which formed the westernmost border of New Jersey. They could then escape across the Delaware, where they would effectively be safe, having the wide river between them and the British, and also being able to keep the British from advancing on Philadelphia. So if Washington had any hope of reversing the fortunes of his Continental Army, he had to do it in the next few weeks.
MFT says the world was better when the British Empire ruled, to be honest, says MFT.
It really didn't seem like things could get worse.
They had so much territory, and now they're just back to a tiny
General
island.
Charles Lee, whom he had again and again begged to come to his aid with his 2,000 troops, had been captured by the British. In fact, the British were so thrilled by this tremendous coup that General Howe decided it was time to...
Jeff Mack raids the stream, ladies and gentlemen. Do you believe it? Jeff Mack? Let's go say hi to some hooligans, shall we? Hooligans, Jeff, I know that you guys are used to coming over here, and I'm in a cut-off sleeve shirt and stuff. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather tonight, so you get relaxed looking, Mr. Rotella tonight. Thank you so much, Jeff Ballyho, my man. We got Dutton inside the chat. We got For the Love of Owners. We got Cricket Chris inside the chat. Jeff says Happy Monday, Ballyho Jeff. Ramsey joining us. Hi, Ramsey. How are you? Jeff said you are in the proper hooligan apparel tonight. Am I? Look, Rotella Streams, baby. If my camera wasn't flipped. Ballyho hooligans, come on in. It's great to see you. Elder Zoomer, Ballyho, come on in. Jeff Mack, I hope I'm not going to talk too much about. I've read your stuff. I hope things go well for you, my man. Ballyho to Jeff Mack. Let's see. Have you guys followed Jeff Mack yet? Boom. There's that guy right there, everybody. Make sure you follow Jeff Mack right there, everybody. Jeff Mack usually goes live before the Dome. Hang out with the hooligans, hang out with Jeff Mack, and then come hang out inside the Dome. Thank you so much, Mr. Mack. We are watching a documentary about the crossing of the Delaware right now. It's a short one, and then we're watching Trump's Christmas speech from yesterday. We hope you join us.
To come.
You're right, Cricket Chris. The best is yet to come now that you're here. Thank you, Jeff Mack. Ballyho, my man. Let's go back to the Dome Theater, shall we?
Go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Thank you, Mr. Mac. Ballyho, my man. Good luck in everything, dude.
Call it a year and retire to winter quarters. The situation was that Washington and his ragged troops were huddled in Pennsylvania, and General Charles Lee, whom the British feared far more as a general than they feared the
Ballyho hooligans,
Washington,
welcome in.
was their captive. So, Cornwallis made plans to sail back to London to see his wife, and Howe went to New York, where he expected to spend the winter with his mistress.
Yeah.
A number of Hessian troops would, of course, be stationed in encampments along the Delaware on the New Jersey side, just to keep an eye on Washington and his forces. But the British...
Cricket Kiss invested $5.
Thank you, Domebot. Cricket Chris, thank you so much. $5 Dome investment says hugs and love to all. Thank you so much, Cricket Chris. Ballyho and happy freedom.
Thought that the campaign for 1776 was over. Washington was simply so defeated at this point that there was little reason to worry about him. In the spring, the British could rouse themselves to end things finally, once and for all. It was around this time of deepest desperation that Washington knew he must do something. If he did nothing now, it really was essentially over for the cause of liberty and independence.
To the cause.
On December 31st, most of his men, having come to the end of their enlistment, would go home. But what could Washington do?
Cross the
He would
Delaware,
first of all
baby.
take
Let's go.
advantage of the overconfidence of the British, who didn't dream he and his exhausted forces would do anything dramatic at this point. He'd also take advantage of the fact
is that George Washington doing a
would do anything
look? That's George Washington doing a Kash Patel impression.
dramatic at this point. He'd also take advantage of the fact that, in their overconfidence, they had scattered their forces in a line along the river that was perhaps a little bit too thin. For example, there were only 1,500 men at Trenton. Over the past weeks, Thomas Paine, who was with Washington's army, began to write another essay. This new one, titled The American Crisis, began with the famous lines, "These are the times that try men's souls."
Damn.
The essay was so inspiring that Washington had it read aloud to all of his troops 2 days before the planned crossing of the Delaware. The exact plan was, in fact, for
Is that a
3
lady?
forces to cross the Delaware. One force would cross many miles downstream to attack the Hessians who were stationed at Mount Holly in order to prevent them from coming to the aid of those he would be attacking in Trenton. A second force would cross the river right at Trenton to hold the Assunpink Bridge and prevent the Hessians from retreating. And the third and largest force, with Washington and his generals Greene and Sullivan, would cross the river north at McConkey's Ferry. The plan was to be across by midnight and then to march the 9 miles to Trenton, where they would attack the Hessians at daybreak. When they arrived at the river, wet and cold, they saw that it was higher than usual and choked all the way across by huge and jagged flows of ice.
Yeesh.
Washington's full force was not assembled on the other side until 4 a.m., 4 hours past schedule, meaning that with 9 miles to march, they would not get to Trenton until well after daylight, destroying the vital element of surprise. The snowstorm continued as they marched, and it was so cold that 2 men froze to death en route. It was nearly 8 a.m. by the time they finally arrived at Trenton. The snowstorm was still raging, so the Hessians were not expecting anyone to attack. When Washington gave Nathanael Greene the order to do so, the Hessians standing guard were overwhelmed and quickly retreated into the town. A few moments later, from another direction, General Sullivan's troops attacked. The Hessians could not have been more surprised. The idea that Washington would, with all these men, have crossed the Delaware on Christmas night in a snowstorm and marched through the
awesome.
snowstorm 9 miles to Trenton was simply inconceivable. So the Hessians tumbled out of their barracks and desperately tried to marshal a defense. But Henry Knox's artillery were stationed at the head of the 2 main streets and blasted cannon fire, clearing them immediately. The fighting moved onto the side streets. Eventually, the Hessians desperately retreated to an apple orchard, but were finally surrounded. Only an hour had passed, and it was all over. In the end, the Hessians counted 112 casualties, 22 killed and 90 wounded. On the American side, only 4 were wounded and not a single life was lost in battle.
Damn.
And the Americans had captured nearly
Other than the ones that froze on the way.
1,000 Hessian prisoners. It was an astonishing victory. The news spread quickly. Those who had counted Washington out and who had counted the cause of liberty out realized that his bold stroke, successfully executed despite monumental obstacles, had changed the momentum of the war as dramatically as possible. Once more, the British knew that what they so assuredly believed was essentially finished was far from over. And of course, when it finally
Eric7712 invested $1.
Thank you, Eric and Amy. Amy says, you look handsome tonight. Thought you might need a compliment. Hope you get to feeling better. We love you and all our fellow domers. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Amy. Yeah, casual Mr. Rotella, not bad. All right, thank you, Amy Ballyho.
7 years in the
Chat, you can all learn something from Amy here, okay? Where are the compliments this evening?
unimaginable future, they would have lost the war and the colonies.
It's the pants, says Brad.
Both.
Damn, man, 2 people froze on the way. And what are we doing? What are we doing to save our country? We're not freezing to death, that's for sure. All right. President Trump, Christmas speech coming up. I think he does pull some people out of the crowd to come up and say some things here and there. Looks like we got some kids in the crowd. Let me make some more tea really quick. Give me 1 second, everybody. I'll be right back, okay? 1 second, everybody. Please talk amongst yourselves. I got one of these fancy water coolers next to our streaming setup. It makes cold or hot water. How fancy, huh? All right, we're going to the White House.